Keith Treacy, who watched West Ham 1, Burnley 1 at the London Stadium. Can we just for a moment, because this game wasn't on TV, Keith, and I was listening to the commentary, it was very interesting. What exactly happened when Burnley were in a great position, 1-0 up, and they got the penalty?
Well, it looked like Cornet won the penalty, and he looked like he wanted the ball. Jay Rodriguez, it seemed to me, he was the designated penalty taker. But Cornet just said, listen, I've won it, I'm taking it. And what transpired was he put the ball wide. And obviously, if you're going to take the ball, when you're not the designated penalty taker, you have to hit the back of the net. So I can imagine there'll be a little bit of ill feeling towards him in the dressing room, especially with the miss he had last week against Norwich, which was such a huge miss at the time. They were 1-0 down to Norwich, and McNeil puts it 2 yards out when he manages to put that wide. So not great from him. But to be fair, it was a real fighting performance from Burnley. They defended really, really well at times. They attacked really well at times, which was surprising. Wout Weghorst, that was probably one of his best games I've seen for Burnley, if not the best. Rodriguez was a live wire, and they pressed really high up the pitch, and I think that was a tactic because West Ham, I think Burnley thought they might have a few miles in the leg still from Thursday night against Leon, and in the first half that did prove the point.
That penalty situation, you observed or suggested in commentary that happens when there's a bit of a power vacuum in the dressing room, which there obviously would be at the moment in the absence of Dyche.
Yeah, well, look, I'm a big fan of Ben Mee. I know him on a personal level. He's a friend of mine. I was with him at the club when he came from Man City. He will go on to probably have a coaching career, but at this time, to be walking into West Ham when it's such a big game, to put it into the horses analogy, you're rounding the bend now. You're going for it. You're going for the finish line. Burnley are nowhere near out of this race yet. But to get rid of your gaffer, to get rid of the glue that holds the club together, when you're going into such a massive game, I don't understand it, and then stuff like that. I can guarantee that Cornet would not have took the ball off Jay Rodriguez if Dyche was in the dugout, because Dyche has that bit of fear factor about him. And now that I'm not saying Cornet's a bad lad or anything, but that would not have happened because it's set in stone and the gaffer is there to enforce it. With no gaffer there to enforce it, just little things like that creep in. And although it was a fine performance and a very good performance from Burnley, it could have been better.
Is there any talk of who's coming in for these remaining 7 games, or will it be Michael Jackson, the 23s coach who was dragged into the office during the week and told to his surprise that he was taking the game this weekend?
Well, it could be anybody, Joe. Like with the way this has all transpired, Dyche getting sacked on Friday, the huge game today against West Ham, no manager in place, giving it to Mike Jackson, telling Ben Mee he's travelling to look after the team as well. It just looks like a knee-jerk decision. If it was going to happen after Norwich, it should have happened straight after Norwich. He should have been gone and get somebody in, give the lads a chance to win the game on Sunday. But it just looks, from a business point of view, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because Dyche, for me, even if Burnley go down, he's brought them back into the Premiership twice with a pool of lads, talent-wise, that shouldn't be getting into the Premier League. They shouldn't be getting out of the Championship, and that's all down to him. And I'm like the vast majority of the Burnley fans, that I thought you had a bit of credit in the bank, but we've been told and shown time and time again with Chris Wilder at Sheffield United also, I don't think there is credit in the bank for any of these managers. You're only as good as your last game. And yeah, I think it was a really, really poor decision. I think it's a poor business decision and an even worse footballing decision.
We were chatting pre-game, and goals have been the problem for Burnley this season, scoring goals. So in 30 matches in advance of today, they had only scored 25 times, and that's going to leave any team in trouble regardless of where the defence is. And well, you made the point, others have made it as well. If you sell your striker in January, then there's only so much blame as owners you can apportion to your manager.
Exactly. For me, it's just people deflecting the blame onto the manager, when a manager who has been there for almost 10 years now has, for the majority, overachieved with the team he has. He's done well, and I know people say, a 4-4-2, he's stuck in the old days. He's getting the most out of the team that's available to him. And if Sean Dyche had, say, Manchester City's players at his disposal, I'm not sure what formation he might turn up or which way he would go on to play the game. But all I know is that with the lads he's had for the last 10 years at Burnley, he has overachieved, and he has left. I was there on day one in October 2012 when he came in the door for his first day. And from where that club is now to where that club was, it's chalk and cheese. And if every manager went into a club and left them in a place that Dyche has left Burnley from where he took over, every club would be in a much, much better place. But I really do fear, I think this is the start of a slow decline through the leagues for Burnley, because with the new owners coming in, it looks like they're running it, against another business that's quite profitable, and this is one that's not quite profitable. So he's trying to weigh off all of that stuff. It just doesn't look like he's going to invest in the team. That obviously didn't happen in January, and you're seeing with the investment that Newcastle got. I'm not saying Sean Dyche needed 100 million, but if you'd have given the 25 million that they got for Chris Wood in January, I think you'd have given a fighting chance there to get out of relegation. But the board, I think the fans have seen past the Dyche second, and they're looking at the board and the new owners, and they're seeing where the real problems lie.
It's not an unkind remaining fixture list for Burnley. They have Southampton at home. That's not far from an impossible task. Then they have Wolves at home, so again that's 2 okay games. Then they're away to Watford, which is crucial. Then they have Aston Villa at home, and then their last 3 are Spurs away. That will be tricky. Villa away won't be easy either. And then they have Newcastle, but at home. And you would think at that stage Newcastle will be well clear and maybe thinking about their holidays. So as fixture lists go, they are 7 pretty generous games by Premier League standards.
They are. Well, we say that, Joe, but to be honest, Southampton, you never know what Southampton team are going to turn up. They can give anybody problems on a good day, and on a bad day, they can really take a good walloping as well. And Wolves as well. Wolves are going to be really, really tough. Villa, Spurs, and Newcastle with all the money, 100 million in January, a new left back, a new right back, a new centre half, a new striker, a new centre midfielder. They're a totally different team to what they were in January. So I don't see any of them games being easy for Burnley. And honestly, being in that dressing room with Dyche, I think it's just been made harder for the club to stay up with his second. I have to be honest. And if they had given it to a Sam Allardyce or somebody who was going to come in and play a bit of football, that's happened before. The manager that was in before Dyche was Eddie Howe, and he tried to play out from the back. I remember playing in a game where we're 15 minutes into a game at home to Yeovil, and it's 0-0, and the crowd are booing because we're trying to play out from the back. And I don't know who goes in there next. I really don't. I don't think the fans want the Sam Allardyce. I think football's progressed from that. But I don't see how the team that Burnley have get any sort of results trying to play football. I really don't. I think if you bring it down to a game of football in every game, I think they get beaten quite handsomely. If you bring it down to a dogfight and putting balls into the box and who wants it more, then I think Burnley can hold their own against the majority of the league. But in terms of 11v11 playing football, I don't think anything's going to change with the Dyche second, which is why it's even more bizarre for me.
Yes, so you had your pragmatic type who knew how to get results with a certain calibre of player in there, and it seemed like they were still on board with him, as maybe evidenced by the Everton game. So to pull the plug on him and maybe replace him with a like for like, because as you said, you're not going to have some football playing type manager come in there and overnight manage to instill that. Like, that takes time to get a team playing a certain brand of football. So whoever's going to go in, they're going to have to play pragmatic football, and you already had that in Dyche. So you have to wonder what they're basing the decision on, unless they were sounding out players and hearing bad reports from the dressing room or a sense that they were tired of the same old voice. But again, you look at the Everton result, that didn't seem to be the case.
No, well, I was so shocked by it, Joe, that I started to think maybe there's something in the background happened here. Maybe there's been a fallout face-to-face with Dyche and the owner, and it's a knee-jerk reaction from that. But you listen to Tarkowski before the game. He said he was shocked and, didn't see it coming, had no inkling of it. The players will know. You can smell it around the training ground if this type of thing is happening. And if it's a shock like that, like you say, I don't see the only way Burnley get out of trouble here is pragmatically, and the best man for that job is Sean Dyche. And again, even to go beyond that, to go beyond the Premier League, if they get relegated, the best man to bring them back into the league is Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
They had so much over. The one thing they had over Norwich, Newcastle to a certain degree, all the bottom clubs, was stability with the manager, and they had an identity of how they play and how they go about things. And for me, in the last 7 games now, I just don't see where they go. It's a bizarre and strange decision for me.
Yeah, you've been in dressing rooms, you understand football on that kind of deep level. Do we overrate stability?
No, I don't think we do. You know, people will say it can go a bit stale and the players know. But I worked under Sean Dyche for 2.5 years and I never had an easy day. Whether it was coming in on a Monday after the Sunday game, every day he keeps you on your toes and every day he pushes you to be the best you can. There's never a down day with Dyche and his staff. So for people to think it might have went a bit stale and, you know, the same old faces, the same ideas, I think it had to be that way for Burnley, like I say, because they're not just going to start bopping the ball around all of a sudden and turn into Man City, because they haven't got the pool of talent to be able to do that. And I keep going back to it. The way to win games with Burnley is the way that Dyche is going about it. So all this, you know, he's back in the Stone Age with his 4-4-2. He's pragmatic, and I know that the results haven't been good enough, but you have to look at the finances of the other teams. And I think this is probably the only season that he hasn't overachieved with Burnley. And, you know, they've been very, very quick to pull the trigger.
They sure have. Well, we'll see how it goes over the next 7 games. Presumably someone has to come in. I mean, they can't just leave it with Mike Jackson for the next 7 games. So we'll see what's announced in the next few days. To the weekend at large, I don't know what football you caught. Did you catch Liverpool Man City?
I did. I caught it, yeah. Good game. Great game to watch. Some of the goals, I thought Mane, I think he really has. Him and Salah are just unbelievable. But Mane in particular in that game was outstanding. Man City towards the end of the second half really started to put on a bit of pressure. Silva got the goal, but Liverpool, for me, they just looked that little bit stronger than Man City yesterday. But I have a feeling Man City would be happy enough to win the Premier League and the Champions League. I'm not saying it's going to finish out like that, but I think Man City would be happy enough to let the FA Cup go if it means a Champions League success.
Struck by the same thought. Well, there's the Zach Steffen selection, but maybe look to a point you have to rotate. But the other thing which jumped out in that game, and I think, imagine this was a Champions League semi-final as opposed to an FA Cup semi-final, and City were trailing the way they were. Pep Guardiola doesn't make a substitution yesterday until the 80-something minute. That does not happen if it's Champions League semi-final, I'm convinced.
Yeah, well, that's it. I really do think, and obviously nobody in the club is going to say this out loud, but I think he's trying to guarantee the Champions League. I think Man City fans, they've won the Premier League. The one they want is the Champions League, and the only way, I think that's obviously why Steffen is in. That's why a couple of the players started on the bench and come off. But for me, it's the two squads are so well matched, the two of them, that, you know, they could play 7 games out of the week and it could end up, you know, 3-4, 4-3 to one of the teams. They really are that well matched that you just don't know which way it's going to go. But I think Man City had their eye off the ball ever so slightly in that game, and like I said, I think they are leading towards the Premiership and the Champions League as the two they really want.
Curious for your thoughts on Jack Grealish. What did you see yesterday? Because he got the goal, but what did you see in Grealish's performance, or even across the season, which might explain why, for instance, against Atletico, which is, you know, arguably the biggest game of their Champions League season to date, he doesn't play in that one? What is it that Pep's not convinced by in this £100 million player?
Well, for me, I don't think you need to overanalyse it too much. I think the reason he didn't play Grealish against Atletico was that Atletico were a very physical team, and that obviously showed on the night. But Atletico were going to put in tackles. If Man City want to go and score a goal in Madrid, they're going to have to take, you know, studs down the back of the calves, because the Atletico players, once you break the line, they're not just going to let you go. They're going to pull you, they're going to drag you, they're going to leave stud marks on your calf, on your Achilles, all them little nasty tricks that they do. So if Jack Grealish is going to break the line, usually when he feels something, he will go down, which is not what Pep wants. When he breaks the line, he needs to be able to go through. And the physicality of it, you see in the way Simeone was getting the crowd up and getting them behind him. If Jack Grealish goes on there and starts, you know, going on the ground once or twice, that could actually work in Atletico's favour, that it gets the crowd up, it gets them annoyed, they become a bit more involved in the game, and there's a bit of needle in it. Whereas, you know, City were happy for it to be a football match because there's only going to be one winner. And that, for me, I think Pep probably took him aside and said, listen, you're progressing okay at the club, you're doing all right, you've a 5-year deal, just this one isn't quite right for you. I don't think there's any great panic with Jack Grealish. I think he will go on to be an outstanding player for City. But the one thing that caught my eye, the Kanate goal, the first goal, the header, when you see he's actually with Van Dijk, and Van Dijk leans into Grealish a bit, and he just sends him 10 yards the other side of him. It was like a man against a boy, and for me, I don't know how on earth he ended up marking Van Dijk from a set piece, but just a little bit lightweight at times. Excellent football, a little bit lightweight, but for me, I don't think you need to overanalyse the Atletico Madrid game. I think that was an isolated one that, in this instance, you're not right for this game.
Yeah, like that is it's kind of damning of £100 million player. Like, is Jack Grealish at this stage in his career not mature enough to handle that occasion and not incite the crowd and dive unnecessarily? I mean, we're talking about him here as if he's an 18-year-old new on the scene. Like, Phil Foden's out there able to handle it, and he got bashed around as well.
Yeah, and I have to say, Phil Foden, he stuck up to it well. Savic was quite rough for him at times. There was one or two leaving it on him. They were actually taking turns to hit him every now and then. But I just think Foden has a bit of a cooler head on his shoulders. I think he realises the reason I'm getting kicked is because people think I'm a good player. They're not just doing it to hurt me. They're doing it so I can stop hurting them. Grealish, to me, he takes a little bit too long on the ball, whereas Bernardo Silva, I think it just moves the ball that bit quicker than him. Even Mahrez moves that ball that bit quicker than him. And I don't think he's ever going to play for Manchester City through the middle. He's going to play on either the left or the right. And for me, that's not his best position. You're asking him to do things that he wouldn't naturally do, although he has played well off the left for Man City. I just think there's one or two things not weighing up right from at the minute. But like I say, I do think next season will be a bigger season for him. He's just getting used to the club, getting used to the players around him, and I would be more inclined to view him on next year's standing than this one. Yeah,
it does seem to take a while for players to adjust to what Pep's asking of them. Although your point there about him taking a bit too much out of the ball, it's like in some respects when you think of him at Villa, that inside left channel, getting on the ball, getting turned, running out of defence, taking time on the ball and dribbling, like these are his great strengths. And you kind of wonder if under Pep you're almost getting him to do things that are almost too easy for him. Take a touch, pass, move, take a touch, pass, move. Whereas, Grealish at his flowing best is taking plenty out of the ball.
But this is it. Pep Guardiola he won't play to everybody's individual strengths. He wants to play to the team strength. And the team strength is a possession-based game that moves teams around. So if you're going to give it to Jack Grealish and he's taking more touches than necessary, it's given the back four or whoever it is at the back, it's given them time to get in and get set and get back into the units. Whereas if a Mahrez has it, he'll give it straight away. The back four is constantly having to move because the ball is constantly moving. With Grealish, he just gives the defenders that extra breath to get their wind back in their lungs, and that's not what Pep wants. Although it's methodical, it really is. It breaks them down, and even a foul. If you go and foul Jack Grealish or a Mahrez, put your hand on the ball, go and get in, bang the chest, give the ref out. It's breaking the game down for another 30, 45 seconds, even a minute. And Guardiola just wants high tempo possession football, which at the minute Jack Grealish is not just dropping into line with that just yet. But like I say, Joe, I think next year will be a bigger year for him.
No, it's fair. You'd love to ask him privately, do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy not being allowed to manipulate the ball and play around the way you used to? We'll never know for sure, but you'd love to have that private conversation with him.
Well, yeah, look, I'm sure the answer would be I'd love to be able to run at people and, take chances. But that's just not... You're at a stage now where you're at one of the biggest clubs in the world, probably the best coach in the world. And if this is how he wants you to do it, this is just the next ladder on the rung. Yeah. The next rung on the ladder, sorry. So he just needs to keep progressing and keep doing what Pep Guardiola wants to. He wouldn't be the first player to struggle in the first year under Pep. So, like I say, next year will be a big, big year for him. And I do actually think he will get over this little bump and he will get a secure place in the front three maybe next year.
Yeah, I guess arguably makes him a more complete player if he can do both. What's your sense of who wins the league between these two?
For me, I think City might just pip it, only because of the point that they're ahead at the minute. I know a lot of pundits are saying the both of them could go, the rest of the season unbeaten, which could happen. And obviously, if that happens, City win the league. I think there is twists and turns in it yet, especially with both teams still being in the Champions League. I think there's twists and turns in it. I just think Manchester City will negotiate that a little bit better and just come out on top in the Premiership. The Champions League, I think, is what City really want. So even if it came down to City in a Champions League final, I think they could come away from the squads in the Premiership to try and protect the lads in there. So there's all ifs, buts and maybes in it. But I'll go for City. I'm going to go for a City double, Joe. How's that?
Well, listen, be interesting. I take your point that they're both so bloody good. It's the finest of margins and moments and games. So, be a fun finale to the season, that's for sure. Listen, great stuff today, Keith Treacy. Thanks very much.